Hey everyone, this is David Moocow, and today we're going to be looking at X-rolls. So first, here's an inward X-roll, an X-roll, a back X-roll, an inward back X-roll, a Ludwig roll, and a Wolfgang roll. Some of the prerequisites you'll want to learn are varial rolls, outside rolls, foot transfers, outside push mushes, which you can learn as a mount, and also crank idle. So let's take a look at a complete X-roll. Whenever I try and learn any trick, I try and break it down into as many individual components as possible and then learn those components. With an X-roll, there's 5 components. The first is the foot transfer, or however you want to get to actually starting the X-roll, and then that's followed by the first push. Then you're going to be doing the transfer, then the second push, and then you're going to get back to the pedals. So here's a look at roughly how it was when I was learning. The idea here is that you want to practice each part individually until you get good at that. Then if you're good enough at that, you can move on to the next part. Make sure to spend a lot of time on the actual rolling part of this. Hopefully you'll be good enough at outside rolls that it shouldn't be too hard, but it's very important to actually get the roll down very, very well. Otherwise the whole X-roll will be extremely difficult for you. Next you're going to want to practice the transfer. This is probably, or at least for me, was the hardest part of learning how to X-roll. So I'd recommend just spending a lot of time focusing on this one part, getting the cranks in the switch position, and then practicing the transfer as a mount. It's important when doing the transfer to try and remember to stay a little bit forward. This will help you maintain your balance and then do the second half of the roll. Next you're going to want to practice the second roll. This is just a half rev, and there's no actual kicking of the tire to push it, unlike the first half, so it's just moving your body weight forward. Finally, you're going to return to the pedals. There's a number of ways to do this. You can either do a simple jump over or a 180 out. It really depends on your preference. Everyone has their own preference, so I'd suggest trying both and seeing what works for you. Once you start to get every part down individually, it's time to start linking it together. So it's probably a good idea to learn this as a mount as shown here. As long as you can get all of the rolling on the cranks and the transfer down, you're going to be in really good shape. As I mentioned earlier, for a lot of people the transfer is the hardest part, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time explaining it here. It might be easier to learn if you hold onto a wall. This is roughly how I did it. Just remember to have your cranks in the switch position, and to try and keep the leg you're standing on straight. Here's a close-up of the hand positioning. The idea here is that right as your other foot gets on the crank, you want your other hand to be on the seat. Right here you can see that both of my hands are on the saddle at the same time, right when both of my feet are on the cranks. Now during this part of the transfer, the uni should be completely vertical. The biggest thing to work on here that's not mentioned is practice. For most people this trick takes a lot of attempts. A regular X-roll is just like an inward X-roll, except your leg goes over the seat. The only difference between this X-roll and an inward X-roll is the transfer, so just make sure to practice that more and more. There's no secret to this, it'll just take a lot of practice. Back X-rolls are actually fairly easy to learn. The big trick is the first push, because most people aren't accustomed to rolling backwards like that with the outside of their foot on the crank. So get really used to that, and then the rest of it should be easy, because hopefully you'll be able to varial roll by now. If you can't varial roll at this point, I'd definitely recommend learning that, because the second half of a varial roll is extremely similar to the mechanics of a second half of a back X-roll. Back X-rolls can be done with the leg going over or in between the saddle, so try both and see whatever is easier for you. A Wolfgang roll is basically a regular X-roll, except that your leg goes behind your other leg. The key to this is again transfer. If you can get that down, then it really shouldn't be too hard. You also need to focus on really hucking your momentum forward for the second half of the roll. To get the transfer, definitely lean very far forward. A Ludwig roll is basically a Wolfgang roll, but with the seat going behind your back instead of in front of it. It's a good idea for Ludwig rolls and Wolfgang rolls to bend the knee of the leg you're standing on a little bit right before you transfer. This will make it easier to swing your leg behind. So the best advice I can give you for this is to try and learn the transfer like I'm showing you here. You want to step onto the uni with the cranks in the switch position as a mount. Then what you're going to do is holding the saddle with your left hand at the handle, just like a rolling wrap, is try and do the actual transfer. Just like a regular X-roll, you're going to want both of your hands on the handle at the same time when you're doing the transfer, right when your leg hits the other crank, and you want your uni to be vertical. Also, when doing the transfer, try and make it so that your foot points downward a little bit. This will make it easier to slide your leg in between your other leg and the uni. Once you get X-rolls down, there's a lot of cool combos you can do with it. I really hope this tutorial helped you. Thanks for watching.